Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Harry Cosmo, football journalist for BBC Sport and others, and I'm here to react to Newcastle's Champions League group. The draw's just been made, and what a draw it is. Fantastic from a Newcastle perspective to get the draw that Newcastle have, which is the group of death really, Group F. Newcastle alongside Paris Saint-Germain, Borussia Dortmund and AC Milan. I mean, that is, on paper, you couldn't get much tougher in terms of San Siro, the yellow wall, the signal doing a part for Dortmund as well. And then PSG, fantastic players that they have. Kylian Mbappe coming to St James's Park will be really, really interesting. I think I made a tongue-in-cheek comment about him in my Cellar Cup vlog where I said that I was a bit worried about Dan Burn going up against him. I think that we're going to see how that's going to play out possibly this season now. So that's going to be really, really interesting. But the reaction of this can go either way. You can look at this and say Newcastle have been drawn a tough hand and that it's going to be difficult for them to qualify for the Champions League knockout phases from this group. Or you could look at it in the way that I think I am, and I think that is to take these challenges head on. Newcastle are in this position for a reason. They're in this position to sort of challenge themselves against the best. And that's a really good opportunity to do that. Obviously, the best player in the world is coming in Mbappe. You've got Sandro Tonali facing his old club in AC Milan. You've got Alexander Isak facing his old club in Borussia Dortmund. I know firsthand how difficult he found it there. So he'll have a couple of points to prove, I'm sure. The thing to remember is Newcastle are a better team than they were under Sir Bobby Robson 20 years ago. They were fast tracked into that position. But if you looked at the squad going forward, there was plenty of quality, but at the back they didn't have a great deal of class and quality, and players in that team admitted that. Whereas Newcastle now have a team that is fully capable of competing at that level, and I don't think there's any of those three teams that will enjoy coming to St James's Park and will enjoy facing Eddie Howe's side with the pressing and the intensity, the atmosphere that's going to be generated on Tyneside for those three games. And then the away support that they're going to have. Remember the San Siro 20 years ago against Inter, 12,000 Geordies in behind that goal. That can be recreated against Milan here, and you've got to remember that Sandro Tonali, Newcastle went to AC Milan, put money on the table, and brought Sandro Tonali, one of their better players, to the club. That shows what the sort of trajectory of this club is, and that shows that Newcastle can go and compete off the pitch of AC Milan, and they can show that they can compete with them again on the pitch as well. Rafa Leao at St James's Park is going to be really exciting as well. There's so many good players. Dortmund have not had the greatest start to the season in the Bundesliga, but Karim Adeyemi, a really good player. Obviously, Gio Reyna in midfield as well. There's such a wealth of quality in these three clubs and teams that you've got to be wary of, but that doesn't mean you've got to fear them. This is an opportunity for Newcastle, and a fantastic one at that. To beat the best, you've got to beat the best, and I think there's a chance here that Newcastle can put themselves on a map Europe-wide if they can get through this group, which I think is a very, very good possibility because, PSG are a work in progress. Luis Enrique, back at St James's Park for the first time since he scored in the 3-2 defeat to Newcastle, Tino Asprey's hat-trick in 1997. He's still making his way at PSG. There's a lot of dead wood that he's trying to get rid of. He's still trying to make put his stamp on that team. Mbappe, obviously, that saga has really taken them over. So they're still finding their identity in the sort of post-Neymar, post-Messi world. Newcastle are the exact type of team that PSG will not want to face, with the intensity and that pressure that will be on them from the off at St James's Park. The Parc des Princes is a fortress for them, particularly in Europe and particularly in the group stages, but there's nothing to fear. The yellow wall is going to be an absolute experience to play in front of for a lot of these players. Joe Linton's played in front of it for Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. Obviously, Isak, as I mentioned, played for Dortmund. There will not be a player in the Newcastle squad who's worried about this draw, and I really don't think the fans should be either. It's going to be a really great ride. It's going to be as fun as it was 20 years ago, if not more so, because there's a chance of getting into the knockout phases. Obviously, there was two group phases then, and they just fell at the second one. But the difference is that they've got to start quicker this time. They obviously were the first team and the only team for a long time, almost all of those 2 decades, until Atalanta did it a few years ago, to lose their first 3 games in 2002 and still progress through the group phase. They can't do that this time. They can't afford a slow start. They've got to be quick. They've got to win that first game, especially if it's at St James's Park. Obviously, we'll find out You may well, but watching this, know the fixture list. Obviously, it's released a couple of hours after the draw itself. So we'll find, you may well know what the first game is. I, at the moment, as I'm speaking, don't. But they've got to be, if it's at home, they've got to win that game, or at least get a good result and a good performance to grow the confidence going into the second one. Otherwise, if they start slowly, this is going to be it is a cutthroat group. That's the reality. PSG are not going to need too many chances. Dortmund have got a lot of quality, as I've mentioned. Rafa Leao is a fantastic player for AC Milan. But first and foremost, this is a first step into the Champions League. This is an opportunity to make some memories, to stop talking about those from 20 years ago. And I say that as the author of a book of that era. Let's be honest. I mean, those trips. There's not a bad one there. There's not Paris. A brilliant day out in Germany as well, and then Milan. I mean, everybody remembers that Inter game. It encapsulates everything that was great about the Bobby Robson era. In the book that I wrote, Black and White Night, John Carver describes the fans behind the goal perfectly, and the sea of black and white that met Sir Bobby and himself walking out the tunnel near the corner of the pitch that day. And that can be recreated, and that's what you've got to focus on. Just enjoy it. That's all you've got to do. There's no reason to fear anything. It's just a brilliant opportunity, and I think that, as I say, PSG will be favourites in this group, but they are in a real transition. There's a lot of players that Luis Enrique doesn't have a place for. Gini Wijnaldum is in that list. Hugo Ekitiko, another one Newcastle fans will be familiar with, is in that list. But they've also signed some really good players as well. Obviously, Marco Asensio is going to be a really interesting signing for them. They're going in a different direction after the Galactico era that they sort of went through. Didn't really work. Obviously, Messi's just left and Neymar's just left, but Mbappe is the star here. Newcastle are not a team to be written off, and I think the thing to remember is not to go into this group and fear it, because every one of those teams will be looking at pot four and looking at the opportunities that were in there to get some clubs who were debutants, obviously being Union Berlin and Royal Antwerp. But so much quality in that team: Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, Joe Linton, Isak, Botman at the back, Gordon and Barnes, who all of whom are either experienced at the level or ready for that level and wanting to prove themselves. And everything is ahead of Newcastle. That's what you've got to remember. There's nothing that and if it doesn't work, and if Newcastle drop into the Europa League or drop out, it's a learning curve and they'll come back stronger. This is where Newcastle need to show that they belong, and I think that it's a fantastic opportunity, and that's all it is. And for me personally, I'm not sure what the situation for me is as a freelance journalist. I have to sort of play it by ear, but I'm really hoping to get to all the home games if possible, and some of the away games as well. And what an experience it'll be. And then, as I say, going forward, this is where Newcastle have to show where they belong. There's no better way to show that. Newcastle have to go into all three of these games knowing that that they will not be favourites in any of them. That all of the teams have been a major European names, and they've all been there and done it in various different ways. PSG, this is the year that they'll really they've got a Champions League winning coach in Luis Enrique, who's obviously done it with Barcelona, won the treble there, proven himself on such a level. And Luis Enrique will take them in a different direction to Christophe Galtier. They've really sort of muddled through in the last few years. Now it feels like they've got more of a set approach to things, with Mbappe being the sole spearhead as opposed to one of three up front where it didn't quite gel. There's Dortmund losing Bellingham in the summer, AC Milan losing Sandro Tonali to Newcastle. There's a lot that these clubs have to sort of bounce back from, and I think that they'll really not fear and they'll not relish coming to St James's Park with the atmosphere being as raucous as it will be. And as I say, this is a Newcastle team that is in much better shape than it was 20 years ago. It's a team that is driven in a different way, that has quality across the pitch, whereas that team, and as I say, having spoken to people around the club at that time, Newcastle at the time were really sort of driven by Sir Bobby Robson and the way he moulded that club through his love and his passion and his emotions. Many more scientific reasons why Newcastle are ready for the level now and ready to take this group by storm, and I think they really will. I really think Newcastle have a great opportunity to get through this group. I think there's a lot to be wary of in every single of those teams. Adeyemi, as I've mentioned, Leao, as I've mentioned, Mbappe, obviously. But there's so much for those clubs to fear about Newcastle as well, not to mention St James's Park. Thank you very much for joining me. Please continue to like, share and subscribe. I've got to 100 subscribers, which is my target before the end of August, which I'm really chuffed with. 3 weeks in, and yeah, a couple of weeks to go to the Champions League, so let's just enjoy it. See you next time.